I forgot how awkward this was. Okay, hi. I haven't tried this in a while, but I'm working with new tech, and I got my color changey light bulb to work for the first time in like 2 years. And most importantly, I just finished maybe the best book I've read this year. And that would be A Disappearance in Fiji by Nilima. This book is set in, I believe, 1916 in British colonial Fiji. It's from the perspective of Sergeant Akil Singh, age 25, who has recently been reassigned from Hong Kong to the island of Fiji. The story gets a little more into the background behind his reassignment, but on a larger scale, was part of a recruitment effort to bring like specifically Sikh police officers from India to Fiji. I could be wrong, but I think the afterword actually specified that that was like a real thing that happened. But so, being a colonial set historical fiction murder mystery, this does set it in the same realm as authors like Ovidia Yu, Sajada Massey. I would say probably also Shamini Flint, Harini Nagendra. I think I actually recorded a review for one of her books and never posted it because I was having tech issues. But I'll come back to that. Does put them all in the same realm, and I did finally find this book, even though I think it was published in like 2023. Because I think actually Sujata Massey posted about it on her Instagram. It's better late than never, at least for me finding it. The post might have been kind of old. But basically, all of them have got me in a chokehold. I did find all those books because I got really into cozy mysteries, although I would say probably with the exception of the Auntie Lee series, none of these are actually that cozy. They deal with some pretty heavy themes and events. And even Ovidia Yu, and she wrote Auntie Lee, but she also has the Crown Colony series, again set in like, I think it's 1920s, like colonial Singapore. And they're not cozy by any stretch. I mean, I think they're good for a cozy night in, but I'll get into why I think this very specific niche like really appeals to me. So yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and spit it out here, and then I can actually just give you the review of this specific book. All of these mysteries that also deal with, I mean, the setting has the backdrop of dealing with imperialism and all its heinous effects, right? I think these end up being meatier, like more consequential stories than a lot of what you see published in like the modern cozy mystery sphere. That there is a point where it's like a little too much fluff, but honestly, some of the ones I've read that do tend to be, or like try to be, I'll say like more woke for lack of a better term coming to mind at the moment. I don't know, one in particular seems to deal like to go for that by dealing with more like surface level kind of identity politics, hashtaggy, like box ticky, like um that kind of approach, I guess. Whereas in, I'll just say this whole sphere, I think it applies to all the books I've read that I mentioned a few minutes ago. You see these systemic injustices actually coming up in like the entire dynamic of the story. It affects the protagonist, and you're getting like the point of view from. It affects the villains, or well, the villains affect it in a lot of ways, but sometimes it affects the villains. Definitely affects the victims. It determines how the crime can be investigated, whether it's going to be solved and the perpetrators are going to be brought to justice, or at least, well, you get slightly better endings in these because they are books than you get in real life a lot of the times. But it's much more embedded into like the entirety of the story, I guess. But so with that out of the way, the setup for this thing I mentioned, colonial Fiji, Ackle is I guess his rank is sergeant, but he's trying to work as a detective basically, and his initial posting was in Hong Kong, where I don't know if this is a spoiler. Let's just say a lot of his work was actually just kind of looking out for like wealthy elites in Hong Kong. And he was very successful and very happy in his life there. But things happen. He gets sent to Fiji. And he's very unhappy with his work there. He feels like he's doing a lot of menial things. He's not respected. This is prior to like the main events of the book. And just going back to how I think these are like meteor books, you see him struggling with like feelings of disgust at other Indian immigrants to the island, specifically ones brought over as indentured laborers. And it's a little difficult to read coming from the main character, because you feel like the obvious impulse is you should have solidarity with these people and realize you're all in the same boat. And I'll just say there is a character arc that's really nice to see there. So, you know, those situations, they're written in very deliberately, and that's something that happened a lot at the time, and that's a problem a lot of people still have in modern times. It's a never-ending, it is a continuing problem as old as time. Are you going to be given this little bit of power and play your role in a system that ultimately hurts you too? Are you going to take that and step on the people slightly below you that you have much more in common with? Or are you going to reject that and stand with them, basically? I guess one thing I did just want to come back to add, stories of colonialism are definitely not only in the past. I do appreciate some of the nuanced character arcs in the book, because even a few years ago, like specifically with the genocide in Palestine, like I was very ignorant to actual history. And you know that was possible because it's not something that impacted me. But kind of just as the main character in this book is confronted with the realities of the situation, kind of just up the road from him, maybe a mini spoiler, but like he does grow and decide to do something about it. We'll put off to the side. I'm curious as I read more of the series, even though I think it's like there's only one more book in it that I know of right now. Like, I do wonder if he comes to examine his role in the colonial police system a little bit closer. But, you know, for the book as it is, I was very happy with how things progressed. Yeah, so not an overly fluffy book. There's nuanced things happening there. Also, the protagonist is 25, a couple years younger, close to my own age. It does prompt you to kind of reflect on, like, your own role in current events, or, you know, at least in the world and the time that we're in it, so I think that's a good thing. But, okay, actually a little backtracking. I mentioned his reaction to being lumped in with the indentured laborers a lot. The mystery in this book, it centers on a disappearance in Fiji, but specifically from one of the sugarcane plantations there, and the rights and conditions of the indentured servants from India there is, pretty much like the central thing in the book. And it was really neat to get to the, not epilogue, I think it's under acknowledgments at the back of the book, but it's the author's spiel about several different things. About why she wrote the book for one thing, and I already loved the book at that point, but it just bumped it up like another level because she is, as she puts it, Fijian, Indian, Australian. I hope I got those in the right order. But her great grandparents were some of those indentured laborers. I think in roughly the same time frame. And she said she was born in Fiji. Family relocated to Australia when she was like 3. She grew up like pretty disconnected from her cultural background, but after some travels in India, she started digging a lot more into her family history, reconnecting with that, and while doing research on it in Fiji, that's when she started getting inspiration for writing the book. A lot of the seeds of like some of the characters and events in the book actually came from like real clippings or like real articles from the Fiji Times. And one of the neatest details is at the beginning of a lot of the chapters, there will be a little article excerpt that says, from the Fiji Times, blah, this date, 1916. And several of them are from an article called Chop Chop. I found out it's actually an anonymous author, but it's what the article's referred to as. And it's kind of like biting social commentary, parody, critique, that. But I guess, like, I don't know, Fijian 1906 or 1910s John Oliver or something. But you find out in the acknowledgments that most of those are real clippings. She didn't make them up for the story. She inserted them where it was relevant. And she chose some selectively, ones that reference the working conditions on the plantations and things like that. But I thought it was pretty freaking cool. I thought it was a nice reminder that most things being justified as like acceptable for the time never were. There have always been people with a moral compass who stood up and called things out, and hopefully there always will be. Yeah, so I'm sorry that's pretty rambly, and I talked as much about other books as I did about the one that I just finished that broke like I'm gonna say like a 10-month long reading slump. It's been pretty bad. But I am having trouble thinking of what to say without running into spoilers in the moment. Just know it was really good, very worth your time if you like the other authors I mentioned, if you've fallen kind of down this same very small corner of like the murder mystery world that I have. Like, go buy it, check it out, whatever, immediately. One random fact, it did make me really want to try Nimbupani. I hope I'm saying that kind of close. But it's basically the Indian version of like lemonade or limeade, and it's sweetened and spiced, and that sounds really tasty. I just had never heard of it before, so I thought that was neat. Other things kind of in the same vein. When I finished the game Murders on the Yangtze, that's probably another mispronunciation. That's a game I'm absolutely in love with. It's probably the only one I'd rank up there with like the Nancy Drew PC games personally, but it also falls into this niche of like a early 20th century colonial setting. You probably guessed it's set in China, but there's just a bunch of reasons I think it's really well done. And then it's several chapters, like under an overarching mystery. But there's one part of it that is just super interesting to me personally, because it's set in a steel foundry, but that's for later. Some of the time I haven't spent reading, I have spent playing cozy games like visual novels and things. Visual novels are like kind of reading. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, long hiatus. Moved, started a new job. I do roller derby now. That's so fun. It does take it. It will commandeer your free time. Particularly during the like bouting season, which is kind of over, at least for, yeah. Anyway, at least for things that I would say I'm very much at the recreational level. So there's a more competitive world that I'm only dimly aware of most of the time. But yeah, I'm hoping this new setup and area means this little hobby is a little easier to do. Because I do have the disease, like the posting disease, basically, where you just have to review things and at least shout your opinion into the void. But I think it's fun. That's about it. Thanks. Go read A Disappearance in Fiji.